look at my life, I'm a lot like you were. Oh man, look at my life, I'm a lot like you were. Oh man, look at my life, 24 and there's so much more. Live alone in a paradise that makes me think of two. Love lost such a past. Give me things that don't get lost. Lullabies look in your eyes. Run around the same old town. Doesn't mean that much to me, to mean that much to you. I've been first and last. Look at how the time goes past. But I'm all alone at last.
This is a special presentation.
Some time ago, at the longest river in the world, there was a prospective fisherman. Despite little experience, he believed there was a chance he could set up in the bazaar one day, sell his keep, and fill his long, empty pockets. He knew of a hidden spot on the Nile, with little competition, that was open for the taking, and could bear rewards. Every day, he set out again and again to strike big, but had little to show for his efforts. With all the time he spent there, he began to notice a trio of women across the river on the other side. They would come each afternoon with full laundry baskets on their heads and scrub clothes at the bank for an hour or so. Despite a need to move to a more fruitful catching spot, the fisherman continued to return. He felt as if he'd developed an unspoken connection with the pretty girl in the middle of the three. He would see her look up every so often in his direction, and they would exchange longing stares from all the way across the waterway. He would often only come and pretend to fish so he could see her and she could see him. She would occasionally nod or smile out at the water, and he was sure that these gestures were for him. He begins to think to himself, the wideness of the river separates us, but we should be together. I know we both believe that to be true. She wants to be with me. I know she does. One particular day, there were especially few fish at the end of his spear, but despite his feelings of defeat, he looked to her. She appears to wave him over in frustration. The time is now. We cannot be apart any further, he thinks. Enough fish, enough laundry, and enough waiting. He throws down his gear and begins to wade through the water. He swims and waves frantically in anticipation for the long-awaited rendezvous. The water is deep and the currents are strong, but he fights through it all. But then, he feels a sting on his calf and is tugged under the surface for a few seconds. He looks around to see a few scaly backs drifting toward him. The crocodiles continue to gnaw at his limbs and dunk him underwater repeatedly. He flails and begins to yell out, "Help me! My love! Can you hear me?" But eventually, he is dragged down and doesn't return to the surface again. Across the waterway, the ladies are contentedly finishing their hard work. The girl from before continues to swat at the mosquitoes around her as she gets up and walks away with a completed laundry basket, unmindful of anything that has transpired across and inside the Nile River. Two neighbors live on opposite sides of a canyon. On one side is a book collector, a bit of a recluse, who just finished constructing a new room in his vast library. On the opposite side is a carpenter who shapes intricate sculptures and furniture. And in between them, a deep and perilous drop-off into the desert valley. The only connection between the two bluffs their houses are built on is a lone but sturdy wooden bridge. One day, the carpenter does something he seldom has before, and crosses the bridge to say hello to his neighbor. The latest additions to your house look fantastic from the outside. I've been admiring the work as of late. I have plenty of leftover firewood you can use to warm your study if you'd like it, he says. The collector politely declines the offer, keeps the conversation short, and returns to the inside of his home. A week later, the carpenter returns with a wheelbarrow of firewood. Believing his neighbor's refusal to be mere politeness, he knocks again. I can assure you I'm warm enough. Thank you, but I must be returning to my studies now. Much to the dismay of the bookman, the visits from the carpenter continue periodically throughout the coming weeks. There will be a knock, an attempt to start some kind of rapport, an offer of firewood, and a rejection. With each interaction, the collector grows more and more frustrated with his neighbor. After yet another fateful encounter, he snaps at the strangely persistent carpenter. Can't you see this is why I live out here in the middle of nowhere? I want to read in peace. If you distract me about firewood one more time, I'm going to have to take matters into my own hands. Do I make myself clear? After several days, the carpenter does not come back over the bridge. His continuous absence on the property has been long awaited. One quiet afternoon, the collector is reading, and hears a noisy diesel truck outside his window. Annoyed, he stops outside to greet the driver, who asks him to sign for a large shipment of freshly chopped wood to be dropped off in his front yard. The book collector sweats with anger. There surely must be a mistake. The woodworker lives across the bridge, not here. I don't need any of this. However, the driver insists he has the correct address. It takes some time for the collector to shoo off the driver and deny the delivery, but he eventually does. After the truck leaves, the bookman turns around and looks at his neighbor's house in rage. Since he wants me to use some firewood so much, I'll just have to. He grabs a jerry can and a few matches, then runs over to quickly light the wooden bridge aflame. He jolts back inside before anyone can see, and sighs. But to his terror, he notices that the bottom of his robe must have caught during the act. He bats at it as the heat rapidly rises up toward him. He drops to the floor and accidentally knocks over a bookshelf, then lights it on fire in the rolling frenzy. He manages to save himself, but soon enough, the entire place is engulfed. That night, A collector sits on a boulder and shivers as he looks at the charred remains of his once great library. Once the realization of this tragedy finally sets in, he grows violently upset again. Upset that his reckless actions resulted in the loss of his only passion. But even more upset that he probably could now use some extra wood to rebuild it.
Ground zero alert.
A pair of prisoners are taken into an empty field to be executed by a solitary guard. The guard asks which one shall be shot first, and neither prisoner can decide. He points his rifle at one who drops to his knees and throws up his hands. He begs for his life. Please, sir, is there anything we can do? Surely even you believe we don't deserve to die for these crimes. There's no one here but us. Please. The guard is unreceptive to this foolish attempt to persuade him from his orders. Only so many cells, gentlemen, he replies, as he readies his weapon again. They each begin to bargain with the guard now, throwing out any promises, bribes, or incentives to let either of them survive. Once more, the guard shakes his head at all this, but they are still intemperate regarding their fate. They proceed to throw out pleas in an almost deafening barrage, so much so that the guard says, all right, I'll make a deal to save myself some work. He passes them 2 shovels and commands each to dig a hole side by side. Whoever reaches 6 feet first will be spared. The other must be put to rest. If anyone attempts to escape, they'll be shot dead. The prisoners are reluctant to agree to such a task until the guard takes aim at them and yells to begin, or else they will both die. They start to dig ferociously, each determined, wiping their brows occasionally, but staying locked onto their task. As more time passes, one prisoner begins to notice dirt from the rival's hole being tossed into his own. He voices his annoyance at first, but isn't met with a reply. He continues to scream and convince the other to stop impeding his progress, with no avail. Sabotage. He realizes he must do the same or lose his life. For hours they trade soil, digging foot after foot, but never reaching the mark. A Newton's cradle of mud hops from one hole to another. At times they reach exhaustion and stop for a while to rest. The other will only start to dig again once he realizes he's been buried in his sleep. They dig perpetually all night, on and off, so much so that the guard realizes his presence is no longer necessary. The prisoners are too focused on getting the other to give in. After all, they can now only see the inside of their own ditch. When they call out for some water, they assume the guard's silence is him waiting for someone to break the rules of the deal and try to run. They keep digging with little progress past a certain point. The occasional rain only impedes their progress. Time slows down perpetually for the prisoners, their groups growing smaller and less accurate. The guard returns a day or two later to find both bodies motionless, partially covered with dirt in their half-completed pits. He unearths one of the shovels and finishes off the two ready-made graves. After a long day of little to no progress on his newest piece, a horn player sits down in his living room for a break. He dejectedly engages in the arduous process of finding the missing remote to his TV. He looks under every cushioning crack, sweeps the floor, and searches each nearby surface. Eventually, something at the top of his periphery catches his attention. The remote was stuck to the ceiling and was sticking out like a sore thumb against the white walls. He grabs a chair, climbs up to reach it, and finds that it has become nearly weightless and full of nothing but air. Somehow, it has almost turned into a kind of balloon. As he lowers himself back down to the floor, he notices the glint of his prized instrument, his horn, slowly rising upward. He runs, yanks it from floating any higher, and sits down, rubbing his head. Just then, he notices his cell phone doing the very same. He watches it settle up on the ceiling like the remote had been. In disbelief of what he's perceiving, he lets go of both the remote and the horn as they join the phone up near the rafters. At first, he believes something magnificently magnetic must be going on with the Earth. But then, the couch pillows he was just tossing around begin to inflate as well. He becomes horrified. He maniacally watches as the television now hovers off of its large stand, only anchored by the cord still plugged into the wall. One by one, each of his belongings takes soft flight, seemingly at random. He hears a clunking sound in the kitchen and opens the refrigerator door to a surprise party of condiments and containers escaping skyward. He runs incoherently into his bedroom and sees that even the bulky queen mattress is starting to balloon upward, taking the sheets and blankets with it. He attempts to dive and lay on top of it in order to weigh it down, but he is slowly taken with it. Just then, out the window into his backyard, he spies that even his new patio furniture is beginning to unsettle from the ground. Frantically, he whips open the large sliding door and attempts to corral as much as he possibly can from taking off into the sky. In his struggle, he turns around and is mortified to see that much of his most meaningful possessions are now escaping out of the house from the new opening and into the atmosphere. Journals, souvenirs, family photos. He feels his feet growing lighter. He releases much of what he is trying to keep, but still continues to ascend. He rips off his inflating clothes that are taking him away and scrambles back, falling to the ground. Just then, he feels a rumbling beneath his knees and looks up to see his house unearth itself. Everything he loves will soon be gone from him. Everything he worked for, everything he dreamed of. Tangible things surely, but life as he knew it, nonetheless. It's only a matter of time before he turns entirely hollow too. A week later, the authorities would find him during a wellness call, completely unclothed, with every article strewn across the lawn, clinging to his backyard garden hose for dear life.
Got the words to change a nation, but you're biting your tongue. You've spent a lifetime stuck in silence, afraid you'll say something wrong. If no one ever hears it, how we gonna learn your song? So come on, come on, come on, come on. You've got a heart as loud as lion, so why let your voice be tamed? Baby, we're a little different. There's no need to be ashamed. You've got the light to fight the shadow, so stop hiding it away. Come on, come on. I wanna sing, I wanna shout, I wanna scream till the words dry out. So put it in all of the papers. I'm not afraid. They can read all about it, read all about it. No.
soon as I think of something right, I can't seem to stop when the doubts flow. Shit, I think I forgot how to stop crying. Nothing but regrets at the end of the day. Never want to talk to you, since I'm not really out trying. Laying down next to the love of my life, trying not to think about dying.
A shipping merchant enters the dock to start a day of deliveries aboard his riverboat. But when he rounds the corner, he sees 3 men already aboard it, ready to cast off. At first, he believes they must have the wrong vessel. But one of the men looks up and meets his eyes with an equally surprised expression. Once he sees their guilty faces and frantic behavior upon his arrival, the man furiously runs to confront the gang of thieves on his boat, but they untie from the piling and push off in order to escape. The man knows that he has to get his boat back at all costs. It is the primary means of his entire business, and without it, his family will be without its sole lifeline. He gathers a running start and leaps off the boardwalk into the water. He grabs onto some of the dangling mooring that is yet to be reeled in during the thieves' quick departure. The boat begins to pick up speed, but the man refuses to let go. Despite the skin-ripping sensation running down the palm of his hands, he holds on like no tomorrow. He holds on for miles, unable to gain any further traction. Occasionally, his body will smash into a bed of shallow boulders, but he holds tight. Each boulder feels like a progressively harder blow to his body, wearing him down. At a certain point, he even attempts to plead with the captors for some kind of arrangement that would let him keep his boat. But they do not listen to him. After many hours of clinging to his beloved and attempting everything that he can think of to rescue it, he begins to feel hopeless in his pursuit. An empty feeling washes over him and his aching arms. A stark conclusion fills his mind. It's either let go or be dragged. How did it come to this? He'd spend the whole day like this until dark fell. The river was endless, and so was his increasingly meaningless endeavor. This realization causes his arm to give. He loosens his grip, then fully releases it. He sinks into the lonely moving river, defeated. For a while, he sits on this feeling until suddenly, a strange wave of confidence washes over him. He lays on his back, floating in the reflection of the now starry night sky. Despite the circumstances, he had the strangest inkling that things were going to work themselves out and be all right, like those before him, ignorant of the apparent driftwood beginning to surround him, and what lurks further beneath the grimy deep, unaware of the graveyard of bones and human remains at the bottom of the riverbed below him.
Swim
Peace.